going to item 1 is out of respect for our friend Bill Rosendahl. We're going to go to Bill. He has would like to address the committee briefly before we go into the regular session. Mr. Rosendahl, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And former colleagues, I just want to tell you that the reason I'm here is about AIDS and dealing with the future of healthcare issues in our great city and county. As many of you know, today is World AIDS Day. I happen to have lost my first partner, Christopher Lee Blauman, to AIDS in 1995. And Michael Weinstein and I were like brothers in the trenches dealing with the most horrific disease that was killing our people right and left. Fortunately for me, I was not infected, and I'm alive today. But a day doesn't go by when I don't think of Christopher Lee Blauman and think about the reality of what AIDS did. Fast forward to today, this very moment, we need a quality healthcare relationship, the city and the county. It's been dysfunctional over the years. And I really believe that the city council puts together a commission, and on the commission talks about the city's relationship to its constituents and to healthcare issues. There'll be a more dramatic support system for every elected in dealing with the issues of healthcare with their constituents. So I just wanted in public comment, I heard, and I know the chair will confirm this, that I spoke with Miguel Santana, and he said, Bill, each council member will appoint somebody next week. It'll be agendized for the next meeting, and I want to applaud you because the stronger you are on dealing with health issues with your constituents, and the stronger the county and the city work together, the better off we all are. Obviously, I was just at Sheila Kuehl's swearing in. She and I are dear friends, and we're discussing that issue as well. And I just wanted to come before your meeting and tell you I look forward to you moving on this, showing the leadership that you must show to make this happen. Thank you.
Bill, thank you so much, and it's great to see you. And yes, next week, 1 week from today, up on the 10th floor in Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, that will be on the agenda, and that is the appointment of the health commissioners by each council office. So thanks for your advocacy on this, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you. You might not see me. I might be in chemo or in radiation or whatever.
If that's the case, then I'll come and see you.
That's where I want to be.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I'd now like to turn the microphone over. I'd now like to turn the microphone over to my colleague, Nuri Martinez, on this special joint committee for the Arts Development Fee. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the item number 1 into the record?
Item number 1, City Controller reports relative to an audit of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs 1% for Art Program.
Thank you, and we have the pleasure of having our City Controller with us this afternoon. Mr. Ron Galbraith is here. I know you have a tight schedule, sir, so please come to the table. And you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Martinez, Chairman O'Farrell, and council members. Thank you for having me here today and for your collective work on this very important issue. Let me also ask two of my auditors to please introduce themselves.
Chief Internal Auditor.
Cydia Reese.
Now, the arts in Los Angeles are a vital part of our economy, our quality of life, as we all know. They create jobs, they attract visitors, they enhance the civic landscape. And one of the ways that the City of LA has sought to assert its place as the nation's creative capital is through the Department of Cultural Affairs and its 1% for Art programs, which require that 1% of the construction valuation for new municipal and private commercial developments be set aside for the creation of art within the public realm. LA's 1988 and 1991 1% for Art ordinances have been a catalyst for public art. leading to the installation of more than 1,000 murals, sculptures, monuments, memorials, fountains, and other artistic creations that Angelenos and that visitors to our city can experience in public buildings, parks, commercial developments, on our streets and sidewalks. In April of this year, my office completed an audit of the 1% for Arts program to determine whether the funds invested in the programs have been spent effectively and as they were intended. What we found is that more than $10 billion in development fees and related interest has accumulated and has languished in the city's Arts Development Fee Trust Fund until today, and the city had no clear plan for spending most of that money. Now, since 2006, 428 different development projects contributed arts fees to the city's Development Fee Trust Fund, which totaled more than $7.7 million. In that period, just 32 new public art projects were created with that money. I know we can all agree that the city's residents and businesses and artists and our visitors deserve better. Now, some of the audit's major findings include that the department reported it had been hamstrung by legal guidelines from the city attorney's office, which were issued in 2007, that mandated that our projects be placed within a one-block geographic radius of the related construction projects. And that indeed was a problem. The department did also not have an expenditure plan for the dollars and had not reported regularly to the City Council on the program. And the department should update its fee rates to be in line with the current Consumer Price Index, which has increased 58% since 1992, indicating that there's an opportunity for the city to increase its revenues to keep pace with inflation. The findings of our audit underline the need to link the city's programming for the arts with the science and accounting of management. And only by doing so will the city be able to offer its residents and developers a better return on their investment for the public art. Now, as controller, I've sought to strive that my audits are designed to enable action. And today you will review these audit findings and also review the great progress, I'm pleased to say, that the department has made with your help. This progress includes new guidelines, recommendations, expenditure plans that will clear the roadblocks and allow these monies to be invested in tangible projects that will beautify communities across our city and inspire people. This progress is a testament to the power and importance of not being afraid to take a hard look at ourselves in the city, coupled with elected leaders and departments working together toward a common goal. I urge the department and your respective committees to keep this great momentum going and work with the City Attorney's Office to consider updating the fee rates to be in line with the current Consumer Price Index and to ensure that revenues keep pace with inflation. In closing, I want to thank my auditing team for their hard work. I also want to thank the leadership and staff of the Department of Cultural Affairs for embracing the audit findings and for all their work to move this issue forward, which they have done so with great passion and great interest. And I'd like to thank the City Attorney's Office for being solution-oriented and applaud and thank the Council and staff for its dedication to this issue. Thank you. My auditors are present and can answer questions, and if you've got any, we would be pleased to do so. And I've got just a brief few moments before, unfortunately, I must run up the hill. So thank you so very much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Controller. Any questions?
That's obvious. I'm late, but could you repeat everything?
It's on tape. Streaming video, I might add.
Very good.
So I do have a quick question.
Sure.
So to me, there appears to be a discrepancy between the controller's findings on updating the fee rate and reassessing the 1% cap. Can you explain the methodology used by your staff, or maybe they can answer the question, to determine the potential for increased revenues?
Sure. Would you like to take that?
Our audit did not go into detail trying to do a calculation. What we just tried to do is identify what the issue was. So the city rules say that it should be increased according to the CPI. We know that the CPI increased about 58% over the years, and the department was not updating that rate. We did not go on an individual case basis to determine the exact amount of revenue that could be lost or enhanced. In the response, Cultural Affairs did provide some scenarios. In those scenarios, in 3 of the 5 cases, the city would have increased their revenue if they had increased that CPI.
Thank you very much for your time.
Oh,
Oh, you have a question, I'm sorry. I
right.
can't
I
see
mean,
you.
First, I want to say I'm really thrilled that you're bringing this forward. This is really an important measure, and the fact that you're bringing it forward means we can get it changed, we can get it updated, we can bring more art to the city, and that's wonderful. I don't understand quite how we got into this situation where we are now, and I don't know if your auditor, if you're able to help shed a little bit of light on that, the rationale for the very restrictive amount and what changed to allow us now to be more broad, and how such a visible program could be dormant for these years, because it's great. It's great to have money for the arts, and the direction that your audit is moving us and where we're going to go is wonderful. But I scratch my head when I try to think how we got here.
I can give you my perspective, and then I'll turn to my auditors for their thoughts on this. One of the things that we sought to undertake in this last year was a look at more than 900 special purpose funds in the city. And this is just one of them. And many of them have funds that are there, some of which have been languishing for a while. Not to say that there's a gold mine there of funds that are unspent, but there are a variety of reasons why funds may be sitting there for quite a while. In this case, what we determined when all is said and done was that there had been a determination made under previous city attorneys that it could only be spent within one block. I've always felt that was overly restrictive, and I'm very glad that the current city attorney has been so embracing of finding new ways to interpret the intent and the letter of the law, which will help us move forward. Plus, I think that each of the departments, and this is true not just of cultural affairs, but of everybody, have to kind of look at being proactive in how do we generate more revenues, or how do we find ways to spend the money that is there, and have a responsibility to do so. I'm pleased to say that under the new leadership of cultural affairs, that is happening, and I know that that is going to continue to happen. Any other perspectives you care to add?
No, I pretty much echo what the controller said. I think the problem was the city attorney's rule, that it had to be spent within one block. That seemed kind of restrictive to us. There was a report that was required by Cultural Affairs to submit an annual report. That might have helped also if that was presented in a formal report to City Council, disclosing the fact that money had been sitting there for a long time.
And now let me add that we put all this information up online, and it is being updated on a regular basis, and there's something like 40 columns of data on each and every one of the special funds, including, by the way, who the responsible party is and what their email and what their phone number is, so that it's available for the council, it's available for other decision makers in City Hall, and for the public as a whole to look at each and every one of these funds and to make sure that everybody's held accountable.
Mr. Price?
Thank you for your work. This is like a gold mine. For those of us who support the arts, it's like new money.
A silver mine.
Yeah, I know we're still working it. But so let me clarify. So the interpretation that we're operating under now is that there is not a one block restriction. Does that mean the monies in a district can be used anywhere in that district, or a certain geographic
has to be within
proximity to the project site, or what?
It has to be within a reasonable distance from where the development site is located. So the unwritten rule that was determined by the city attorney was the one block radius. So now
it's a reasonable distance?
Correct.
As agreed to by the council office and DCA in your office, I presume.
And just to clarify, the city attorney is really better able to opine on what would be sort of a reasonable distance. But there are two ways, of course, in which the 1% for art operates. One is where the developer does it on site. These, where the money accumulated in this case, were where the developer actually paid in as opposed to did it on site. So they can continue, of course, to do it on their own site. But this applies to the ones that are actually paying in.
And then is there a interpretation on the restriction of how these funds can be used? I was told that they couldn't be used, for example, for performing arts, if there was a dance class or a music class, that those kind of activities would not be eligible as opposed to some other kind of artistic expression?
So the categories that can be spent on, it sounds like, are discussed by the city attorney's office, and the department came to an agreement. I believe there's 5 different categories, one of which could be temporary or educational programs.
So would that include a dance class, for example, or an art class?
I think the city attorney would best be able to comment on that in terms of what their legal interpretations are going to be. I will say, and I'm very pleased that there is a broader interpretation, which I think is going to allow for many more forms of artistic expression than previously has been the case.
All right, thank you.
And some of that will be discussed in closed session, I'm sorry, in item 3.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. LeBon, did you have a question?
Mr. Controller, you said there's 90-some categories? 90 special funds?
No, special funds, there are actually something like 970 of them, which
How many in the fire hydrant fund?
Pardon me?
Fire hydrant fund. I know that's a fund.
That's one of the funds. There's even, for example, there's special funds as specific as for trimming of coral trees in the median on San Vicente Boulevard in the Brentwood area. So some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. We've also sought, and we, as part of our special funds report that we issued a number of months ago, to close some of the ones that we thought were worthy of being closed, and to also seek to get from each and every department which enters this information, that information on a more regular basis.
But this total fund is, what's the dollar on this total fund?
There's about $10 million.
And give me another one out of the 900 special funds that's got anything near there?
Many of them have significantly more. I can send you the link, or even
just
print
tell
for
one
you.
so the public could hear it, just to give them an idea. Throw one out.
There are there's a Prop C fund, for example. There are lots of funds for the condition of our roads, for transportation.
Yeah.
You name it.
The
You
only thing
name
I
it,
just
and
wanted
there's a
to
fund.
suggest- I got it. The thing I wanted to suggest is Pete Seeger wrote a song, Turn, Turn, Turn.
Yes.
Do every time there's a season.
Yes.
And one of our problems, members, and this is a joint committee, is our season seems like every day. And I know I've asked for that our infrastructure be looked at 6 months before we do our budget, but these special funds should be a very focused meeting where we all look at that to make sure it's being done. The public expects it. The art community certainly expects it. And if you don't put water on the flowers don't grow. We want flowers to grow.
I would be thrilled, actually, to come back to committee or to council to talk about our special funds report,
Right.
which, by the way, those funds collectively make up approximately 89% of the nearly $8 billion that is in the Treasury at any given moment in time.
Right, so 89%
89%
of 8 billion?
of $8 billion.
So what's 89% of 8 billion? You're the dollar man.
Quick, let me pull my calculator out.
Yeah, just throw a number. You can make it up. It's okay. I won't challenge on it. Anyway, this is an important point because what happens is, Mr. Blumenfield, all of a sudden it's April, and then it's August, and then it's October. And boom, it's just a cycle. So unless we have some type of structure, I see Paul Smith over there with his hands in his pockets. You agree with me, Paul. You're a veteran of so many years. You have to have a time where you look at this thing to make sure that we get it done, because it is disappointing to the public. So I just wanted to thank you, Mr. City Controller, and you have a great new Deputy City Controller that you picked up from another department, so I'm sure you had to put a couple of big trap choices up for that one.
We are very fortunate to have some amazing people and great dedicated people working in our office, and I think the person you're referring to who's just joining us is Monique Earl Ford. So
Yes, yeah, right here. Very good.
a budget specialist
Thank you.
in the city, among other
Stand
things.
up and get recognized by the City Council. New member, Deputy City Controller. Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Any other questions, members? No, thank you very much, Mr. City Controller.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Really a great pleasure, honor to be here, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from the department, a presentation from Cultural Arts Department, the Cultural Affairs Department. If you can please come up to the table, we have Danielle Brazell, our General Manager, and Matthew Rednick, Assistant General Manager as well. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council Member. My name is Danielle Brazell. I am the General Manager for the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. I keep smiling every time I say that. I'm also joined here by the amazing Matthew Rudnick. He is our Assistant General Manager, and Felicia Filer, who is our Director of Public Art. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I have to start by saying thank you. Thank you to this joint committee, Councilmember O'Farrell, Councilmember Martinez, for focusing on this issue. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the City Controller, Galprin, for his diligence in bringing this issue forward. We're nothing without our leadership. And in the 6 months that I've been with the department, just about, I've been able to watch the leadership of this committee, of our mayor's office, of our city attorney, of our CAO, of our CLA, and all of our staff that work with those departments on this particular issue. There's been a broken policy with the city for 6-7 years, and it's been this leadership group that has brought it forward and has worked diligently, painstakingly to resolve it. And I am so pleased to be able to present to you today and represent this fine department in sharing with you what we believe is the policy pathway and a solution to this broken policy. We brought a PowerPoint today that I'm hoping that I can share with everyone, but I'll go ahead and I'll just walk through it. Most of you know that the City of Los Angeles, I think it's actually important to note that the City of Los Angeles was one of the first cities in the country to adopt its 2 public art programs. There's the public percent for the art, which is on, public buildings, and then there's the private developer-led ADF program. Both of these were established by ordinance in 1988. The arts developer fee has been really designed to mitigate the burden private development places on the city's existing arts and cultural services, facilities, and community amenities. It requires developers of non-residential development projects valued over $500,000 to pay an arts fee or complete an arts project equivalent to the value of the fee. Now, from 1991 to 2007, arts development fees were used to support a variety of citywide arts and cultural activities. But in 2007, a restriction was placed on the use of the arts development fees that limited the expenditure to the 1-block radius. Now, this was not only limiting how the fees or where the fees could be spent, but it also limited the type of expenditures, the type of projects that could be used. And so this severely limited and hindered DCA's ability to develop projects that made sense for our community, to be perfectly frank. The administrative burden that this 1-block radius put into effect made it even that much more difficult. And so I think that there were attempts from this department through pilot projects to see if it was possible, and there were some successes along the way. But as we all know, policy, when we realize it's broken, it takes a good couple years to fix. Well, it also takes a good couple years to recognize and realize that the policy is in fact broken. And so we're right at that sweet spot where we've realized that it was broken, we've developed the leadership needed to address it. You guys have done a great job, the department has responded, and we're right at that sweet spot to fix it. Okay. My assistant general manager is telling me to stay on script. Okay. On July 23rd, 2013, Councilmember O'Farrell and Councilmember Huizar co-presented a motion, seconded by Councilmember Cedillo, regarding the ADF program. And what that motion did is it instructed the CLA and DCA to report back on updates to the ADF program. Now, on a parallel track, Controller Galperin also released an audit of the ADF program on April 11, 2014, and the audit identified significant issues related to ADF program, most notably the large cash balance and interest earnings. But as he also just mentioned, he also talked about the geographical restrictions as well as the CPI index being outdated. So what we've done in response to that is we have put forward new ADF administrative guidelines. And of course, because these are on two parallel tracks, the motion and the audit, we're responding them kind of in tandem. So the DCA team has developed new administrative guidelines that really develop the framework needed for a structure for the allowable uses of the arts development fees. Primarily, they fall into four categories: acquisition or placement of art, and that could be like sculpture, as we talk about plop art or hard art. Acquisition or construction of arts and cultural facilities, such as our community arts facilities or centers. Provisions of arts and cultural services, such as community festivals, Central Jazz Festival, site-specific work, performances, etc., or the restoration or preservation of existing art, such as murals, historic sites, etc. The new restrictions also make sure that there's not a one-block radius, but the real key to this, and you pointed this out, Councilmember Price, is that there has to be a reasonable relationship between the development and the type of project. So if you have a small development, that, you really are looking at a mural near that development site. If it's a rather large development and there are employees coming from all over the city, that could be a reasonable relationship for a much broader citywide type of project. The new ADF administrative guidelines also are very specific around the interest accrued, so it must be used in tandem with the original arts development fees. The fee calculation, DCA will definitely work and continue to work with the city attorney and CAO to update the square rate calculation by the CPI. And then the other important piece is that, as you all know, DCA is primarily funded, or actually totally funded through its percent for art programs and the TOT. So in order for us to be able to do these projects in alignment with the percent for art program, we will hold an 18% allowable for staffing and related administrative costs. The other thing to really, I think, acknowledge and note is that this becomes an ongoing collaboration and conversation between the Department of Cultural Affairs, our council offices, city leadership, the mayor's office, etc. We want to make sure that we are developing projects that make sense for communities throughout Los Angeles, and we have to be able to do that in relation with our city leadership. For reporting purposes, however, DCA will develop an annual expenditure plan and fee status report. And for the 14-15 expenditure plan and fee status report, which we've included into our packet for this meeting, which is item number 3, thank you, identifies $7.9 million in unspent fees. A framework on that is that that's less than the annual amount of the Department of Cultural Affairs budget each year. So while 7.9 is a large amount of money, it's actually a drop in the bucket, and that money can go very, very quickly if it's not spent strategically and thoughtfully. It commits $1.7 million to projects, including $1 million in fees that require approval of findings before the end of the year. That's the good news, because we are now in that position. We've got projects that are ready to go. We've spoken with every council office, and we are ready to move forward on this. We hope that with the recommendations of both of these committees, that we'll be able to do that before the end of the year. And that means that we should be able to start seeing and working on these projects very, very quickly. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Members, any questions? Do you have any questions? I have questions.
this on?
Yeah.
Can I sit?
Can you what?
Sit.
Sit?
You need me to stand or sit?
Whatever you choose to do.
Just suggestion for the fine representative of Roosevelt High School. It's always important to stand if you want to communicate. That's my idea.
When I stand, they ask me to sit. When I sit, they ask me to stand. So, congratulations, great job. Found money. We're very excited about it. What do you need from the council to make sure that none of this money goes unspent? How should we act on this to help move this forward? We're very excited about the report, and we want to make sure that we make those strategic expenditures, and we're thinking very carefully as we've talked in the types of projects that really enhance and augment what we're doing in general, and enhance culture and arts in the city.
Great. So we are asking for this committee to adopt, recommend the expenditure plans that we're putting forward, the guidelines, and to recommend to full council that this gets approved before, I think we go on to recess in December 17th. Thank you, by the way.
I have a couple of questions. How does your impact analysis differ from what the controller found?
Impact analysis in regards to what aspect?
Well, there's in your report, you talk about an impact analysis, and so I was just wondering how it differs from what the controller found.
Councilmember Martinez, Matthew.
You know what
Rudnick.
I'm referring to?
Yeah, I believe what you're referring to is the recommended adjustment to the square footage rate calculation by the CPI. We did some impact analysis and we shared it with the controller, and they urged us to work with the city attorney and the CAO to come back to council with updates to those square footage rate calculations per the CPI. We've begun those conversations, and actually in further discussion we're in alignment with the controller's recommendation to do that.
Okay,
So
but you're still talking to the city attorney's office?
Correct.
On the square footage, okay. The other question I had was, how has the city attorney reported on how the interest earning can be allocated?
Sure. In speaking with the city attorney, based on the State Mitigation Fee Act under which our ordinance was adopted, we've been told that the interest that's accrued to the fund actually has to attribute back to the individual fee accounts that were originally collected. So once we were given that direction, we actually performed a forensic analysis, kind of went back and looked at the fees, and using data we obtained from the Office of Finance, we calculated the interest for each fee collected over the last 7 years. And so in the expenditure plan that you'll see on item 3, you'll have the amount of the fee originally collected and then the interest attributable to that fee. And the interest has to be spent in tandem with the fee, what the fee is being spent on.
And is there a deadline?
There are deadlines in association with reporting on fees collected over 5 years. In item 3, essentially our report is requesting the council adopt findings for approximately $1.3 million in fees that are over 5 years old that allow us to essentially commit those fees to projects and retain those monies.
And what's the status of Fund 516? Are there any pending projects?
So Fund 516 is our Arts Development Fee Trust Fund. All of the fees collected are appropriated to that fund or deposited into that fund. In addition, we also have MOUs with proprietary departments such as the airport with LAWA, and under our MOU with the airport, they actually transfer funds into that Fund 516 for us to perform projects with them at LAX and other sites that they administer. So the Fund 516 is constantly in flux, and dollars are moving, and we're hoping to begin spending down the accumulated balance relative to the fees we've discussed.
And I don't know if you mentioned this during the presentation, but what's the status of the 15 outstanding recommendations?
Sure. We actually just went through to kind of internally update how we're doing on meeting the intent of those recommendations. There's a total of 19. I think in the correspondence the controller provided, various recommendations had been completed, others were pending, and others had not been completed. When we kind of looked back and went through each of those, we feel that 12 are for the most part complete and 7 are still pending, and they run the gamut in terms of what recommendations the controller made, but we'd be happy to address any particular question you have with any of those recommendations.
And the last question is, has the department begun to convene the stakeholders meetings that is referred to in the controller's report with the developers and the arts community to seek input on the program?
Sure.
Hello, Felicia. I'm Felicia Filer, Director of Public Art. The department routinely convenes or routinely communicates with developers about their participation in the Arts Development Fee Program. For example, we actually have a survey or questionnaire that they fill out at the end of their project as part of their final reporting documents to tell us, what their experience was. And we also have a similar survey that goes out to the artists that participate. But as far as the controller's recommendation to convene a stakeholders group in the event that we make changes to the ordinance, we have not had a formal meeting, but we have begun to develop basically survey documents that we can send out to developers to get their feedback.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Thank you. When I asked the controller about how we got into this mess or how we get out of this mess, he said the key is leadership. So I want to thank you for your leadership in getting us into this new phase, because this is great that we're able to move forward and we're going to be able to expand the arts that we're doing. So I wanted to start with that, with just a clear thank you. And then ask more of a quantitative question, which is, if we had done this before and we had kept going with the CPI, how much art have we missed out on over these last years? If there's a dollar figure on that, I'm curious about that. And then also, as we move into the future, at what percentage will the arts funding increase? And I know it's not a direct percentage of CPI because it's the 1% or the CPI, so it's not otherwise it would just be whatever the CPI is. Do you know those numbers, and can you share those?
Sure. It's difficult to quantify the exact dollar amount. I think you spoke to it, though, right? When a developer comes to pull permits, building and safety will use the square footage calculation or the 1%, whatever is lower. Certainly, had the city updated the fee structure for since 1992, the per square footage calculations would have been about 68% higher. So to the extent that more projects would have generated fees per the square footage calculation and not that 1%, certainly there would have been more dollars coming in the door. But it's difficult to, we'd have to go back and look at each project and whether it was the 1% used or the square footage calculation to determine the exact dollar amount missed out.
Are most done on the 1% or most on the square footage?
It depends. It depends on the type of construction, and it's based on building and safety will have to charge the lower amount of the 1%. So we're always taking the lower amount. We collect on average about 0.5% of 1%.
I'm assuming, because we haven't raised it by CPI, that probably some 90% of the fees are now the lower is CPI. Once we start raising it, that ratio is going to switch, and at some point it's going to be 1%.
Not necessarily. There are 5 categories of development, and if there's 3 categories, like for example hotels and warehouse, where the 1% calculation is higher, but if you change the CPI, then for those 3 categories, the 1% will be lower. So it's tricky, but there's 5 categories, and 3 of them you can collect more fees at the 1%, and the other 2 you can collect more fees at the per square footage. So that's the calculus that we performed, and that we're happy to sort of study that some more to see what the best sort of menu is to get more fees.
Well, I'd be interested in not an answer that you have offhand, but to know sort of the opportunity cost. How much money have we given up in terms of arts projects over these last 20 plus years because we didn't raise the fee, and then also, you know, what's going to be our increase in the future. But that can be a question for later. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Price?
So is there a different percentage required for public projects as opposed to private sector projects? Or is it 1% whether or not it's a public project? Or?
For public, it's always 1% of the construction value. For the private arts development fee, it's either the 1% or the square footage calculation, whichever is lower on a per project basis.
So the 1% for the public, is that reflected in the figures given here in tab 3?
For the most part, all of the documentation you have in front of you is relative to the private percent for art program. So we'd be happy to, work with you to show you all the projects in your district for the public percent for art program.
Okay, good. I'd like to see that.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there are only a few, but I'd like to know what those were.
Sure.
Any other questions, members? Oh, Mr. Labange.
Very much. I just think it's wonderful. I think January is Arts Month. I think as a general manager, you should make a louder statement on this issue so everybody knows how important it is. I also think before too long, we should honor Joel Wax again as the father of the 1% and get a big picture of Andy Warhol with the 1% sign in his hand, make it up, something like that. But no, this is so important. It's dramatically changed our city. The one question I did ask that I don't know, and maybe Felicia would know, do we require anything of this? I know we can't require, but any relationship with the community college or LA Unified, which has large building programs?
Schools are exempt from the arts development fee calculation.
But could we try to ask that they have 1% of the arts in their development in some sense? That's the only question. Now, I know they're towards the tail end, but it's something worth looking at. I remember, and one of the things, Madam and Mr. Chair, I did in my life always is look at plaques wherever they are and read them. There's a plaque 1 mile up Western Canyon in Griffith Park. It's a 1 mile tree. It's been there since 1915. They planted by the Los Angeles Women's Club, 1915. Plaques are arts as well to tell the story of who's before. So just put that in the back of your mind if it is, so it's so important to have that for us. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Madam Chair. Mr. You know what I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Thank you. I don't have any cards for this item, so if there's no other questions, I'd like us to, there's no objection, Mr. Clerk, I'd like to note and file the Controller's Audit. And can you please take the vote of both committees?
Okay, for the Audits Committee, Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield? For Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River, Councilmember O'Farrell?
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino? Aye. Councilmember Price? Aye. Councilmember Labange?
Yes.
And Councilmember Cedillo?
You can't have fun at school, you can't have fun.
Thank you very much. This concludes this part of our program today. But thank you very much for coming. I'm sure you're gonna come back up. Yeah.
Thank you, Nuri. And yes, don't go far because we're going to hear from you on a couple of other items. So thank you so much. And the next item, too, will be closed session, but we do have 4 comment cards on it. So, Mr. Lidd, would you please read the item?
City Attorney report relative to potential litigation regarding the Art Development Fee Trust Fund. This matter may recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2 to confer with legal counsel regarding significant exposure to litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Lidd. And our commenters today are Christy Clark, who will be followed by Christina Pacheco, followed by Michael Alexander, followed by Charles Flowers. Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is an amazing, amazing thing that's happening, and I can't believe all this money is going to go into the arts. And I can't believe what wonderful collaboration has been happening between the City Controller's Office, the City Attorney's Office, City Council. I mean, this is just amazing. And really, I'm just here to say thank you and to make sure that you expedite this as quickly as possible. It's so important to get this money more equitably distributed throughout the city. I really feel like areas like where I live, which is Sunland Tahunga, I mean, we really, really need this money. And, you know, our development is very different up there. And having this become more equitable in any way would just be so important, and our area would really make a difference too. We have a beautiful McGroarty Arts Center that's really in need of repairs and things. We just haven't had the chance to do this, and we haven't had the money to do this. So I'm just thrilled, and thank you. And please, all of the recommendations that have been made, approve them, and I hope you make that same recommendation to City Council. And once again, thank you. And we all know how important the arts are to our creative economy. And remember that artists vote, and we're the ones that are going to keep you there. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark, and thank you for your passion.
You're welcome.
And we have Ms. Pacheco, Christina Pacheco.
Good afternoon, co-chairs Martinez and O'Farrell. My name is Christina Pacheco. I'm the advocacy manager with Arts for LA, and I am also a proud resident of Glassell Park here in Los Angeles. And I'm so glad to be here this afternoon for this discussion on how we can really foster more art and culture throughout the city of Los Angeles. I want to acknowledge the incredible leadership that has been taken to bring these issues forward. Thank you to Councilman O'Farrell and Councilman Weezar for authoring the motion that will go to closed session soon, and to continue to see that these services are in the best interest of the public. Thank you also to the entire Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River, it's quite a mouthful, committee for their commitment to all Angelinos that we have access to thriving arts and culture here in Los Angeles. This is such an exciting moment, one that's been coming and that the leadership has been taken for so long. And we stand here today to support the forward movement on these issues. Arts for LA was here in 2014, earlier this year, holding our Arts Day when the audit was released. And we really commend the committee and Mr. Galperin's department for continuing to carry this issue forward. What was intended to support the city's investment in arts has had too many roadblocks, which have been discussed here today, and we think it's time to continue to take steps to ensure that change happens. The opportunity to free these funds and to shape a stronger Los Angeles is not only exciting, but it's necessary, and I think the consensus today has been that it's time. So we highly recommend that the committee show full support to the adoption of the recommendations that have been laid out, they adopted the new guidelines to commit funds for the proposed projects and revise the ordinance to reflect the current CPI. It's important today to note, in 1992, when the Nexus study was adopted, LA City's investment in the arts was over $12 per capita. And today that investment is less than $1. So we've seen a lot of changes, and we want to see a stronger and continued investment. And we thank you for the leadership that's been taken here today. We know that it's continuing forward, and we stand here to support you and bring the public's voice into this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pacheco, and shout out for Arts for LA. And next we have Michael Alexander.
Hello there, and congratulations to all of you. I know I'm talking to a lot of arts friends, and I'm on the board of Arts for LA, which had the wisdom about 9-10 years ago to hire Danielle, and now you've had the wisdom to take her away from Arts for LA and put her into a very important position. I congratulate you on that choice. I'm also now about to celebrate my 25th year at Grand Performances and to begin my 12th year as the State Assembly's appointee to the California Arts Council. And so from both the statewide touring and meetings with the public throughout the state of California in my Arts Council role and in analysis of our audiences and surveys that we've done at Grand Performances, we've learned some very, very important things. We know that citizens and tourists have various and varied arts appetites and need programs that will meet those various arts interests that people have. We know that the arts are revitalizing neighborhoods and are very good for business. We know that families of every socioeconomic group want the arts in their lives. And we know that there is uneven distribution of arts resources, that there's more development in some areas and less in others. And so I'm here to urge you to take as liberal a stand as you can, as legally can, to open up this fund and make it possible for the arts to serve communities throughout Los Angeles and bring the tourists to different parts of LA, to each of your districts, and not just to the few that have the most prominent tourist attractions. But when people can go to festivals in different neighborhoods, they're getting a chance to experience LA the way we experience LA, and that's what tourists want. And so I thank you all for the leadership that is being provided here to you, your colleagues in the Controller's and City Attorney's Office, the Mayor's Office, and of course in the Cultural Affairs Department, because this is a very, very important advancement for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. And if anyone has not seen Grand Performances, I strongly urge you to go. It is a sublime experience. And Mr. Alexander, is it free admission? Always free. It's incredible. So go. Next we have Carlos Flowers.
Thank you, Councilman O'Farrell. I am the interim managing director for Arts for LA, but I'm here as a new transplant in Los Angeles, moved here from New York 6 years ago, and how amazed I am by the arts, the wide variety of arts that are available all over the city, not in one particular district. Thank you for your leadership on this. I want to make the comparison that the arts are like the development projects where this money comes from. Some communities have them and some communities don't. I want to put a word toward equity and access. Like a development project, the arts bring more value to a community than just a construction cost or just the cost of a sculpture. Without strong development in Northeast and Northwest San Fernando Valley, Northeast LA, and South LA, these communities are affected economically and now culturally as well. The current strict one-block radius for the use of these funds creates an inequitable imbalance in arts and culture access throughout the city. So please, I encourage you to adopt all of the provisions that are put forth by the auditors and DCA and the city attorney. Let's free up this funding, expand the use throughout more and more communities, and ensure that more Angelinos. This is not about one artist or one arts organization. This is about all of Los Angeles. Experience a city rich in art and culture and arts education.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. And that concludes the comments for items 2. We now go into closed session. And Mr. LaBonge had a great idea. That way, everyone in the chamber could stay comfortably seated while we go in the back room. Are we good with doing that? Back conference. Yeah, I say back room. That sounds kind of shady. Back conference room for our closed session. And then we'll come back out to hear item 3. That way you all can stay seated. to hear item 3, Mr. Lidd.
Item number 3, CLA and Department of Cultural Affairs reports relative to expenditure plans, art developments fee program, administrative guidelines, collections and disbursements in connection with the arts development fee program.
Thank you. And we have 2 cards on this item. First, we're going to hear from my friend Elisa Smith, and then we're going to hear from another friend, Justin Stottle. Elisa? She is here as an artist and not my friend, though.
Thank you, Mitch. Some of you know me very well, some of you not so much. Again, I just want to say thank you, and to Danielle, this is the sweet point for this effort that Ron brought to everybody's attention. I'm an artist. I'm also an education advocate and a community organizer from Northeast LA in Mr. Cedillo's district. Justin called me this morning and asked me if I could be here. He's going to talk more about his project as a civic artist, and I just wanted to make a few points. One is that there is that term in the ordinance about community amenities, and to keep in mind that the cultural landscape of the city of Los Angeles is described by those community amenities that will be administered by the ADF. And those range from the murals of Reseda and to me, the neighborhood music school that's been serving Boyle Heights since the 1940s. Those are all included in there. As a studier of administrative policy, I know new projects use up precious funds, and then what's most important, especially in the city, that's just, something that we've been finding about in the grassroots level is maintenance. So I hope that, and I haven't seen your proposal, but I'm looking forward to reading it, that there is maintenance, that there's 5-year projections, 10-year projections, and if a community really loves a project, that it's also subject to getting a plaque, as Mr. Labange pointed out, would meet the criteria for historic cultural monument status. Unfortunately, I heard one thing that's in this 1%. Can I have just a little bit more?
Yeah, sure.
And that it's developer-led projects. And so once again, I feel like if we keep things clustered and dictated by the developer, instead of having community buy-in and district disbursements of the funds, that some communities will be benefiting greatly, especially downtown, and some communities, such as Winnetka, not so much. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Justin Stottle?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mitch O'Farrell. You pronounced my name right, and that's amazing. Thanks for everybody for doing this. This is really great. I really appreciate what's going on. My name is Justin Stottle, and I'm a civic artist living in Glassell Park. If you visited Glassell Park in the recent past, you may have seen one of my projects installed on a hill that said Glassell Land. This past summer, I spent 12 hours a day every Saturday meeting with 10 other civic artists to discuss ideas about what civic art means under the organization of Fritz Haig and the Los Angeles Seminary for Embodied and Civic Arts. Every Saturday we had discussions with community building activists and artists like Charles Gaines, Alice Waters, Peter Sellers, and many other guests. Felicia Filer, head of public art for Los Angeles, was there, and I appreciate her for coming out. Felicia, when she came out, asked us for guidelines and recommendations for the Arts Development Fund. I urged the city to consider those recommendations. I want to outline some key points raised. One was that the Public Art Development Fund should be equally divided between the city council districts and not just the districts that are booming with development, as you've heard in the past. Each district needs a temporary and rotating art liaison who lives in the district and seeks out artists in the community and solicits proposals alongside the normal open calls. We need to get away from the idea that open calls means equal access to opportunity within a community. Civic arts is about connecting communities with engaging ideas. That's hard work. Fabrication and material costs is only a small part of that. There's a lot of artists and future artists out there who want to be involved in civic arts, and I hope the city can find a way to engage them. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And I love your glass land. It's a sculpture that I could see out of my window. So hopefully we'll figure out where we can land that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done. Thank you. All right. Now I'd like to invite from the CLA, Brian Randall, and then back up from the Department of Cultural Affairs, Danielle Brazil, Matthew Rodnick, and I'm not sure if Felicia Filer is going to come back up. And then City Attorney's Office, please stand by as well. And some questions that my colleagues and I have. First, I was going to ask about the square footage formula, but I think you pretty much addressed that previously. CLA, okay, CLA is doing it. Okay. So, question about CLA. Take it away, and then I'll ask the questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Brian Randall, Office of the CLA. Before you is a report in response to motion Weezar O'Farrell Cedillo to instruct our office, with the assistance of various city departments and in consultation with the city attorney, to report with recommendations and a draft ordinance relative to the arts development fee. Our office has met with the department and the city attorney's office to discuss the status of unexpended arts development fees, expenditure plans for projects located in all council districts, and any necessary ordinances and recommendations to effectuate the expenditure plans. Our report recommendations primarily address the arts development fee paid-in program and also provide instructions for future reports for the developer-led program and the Public Works Improvement Art Program. The report also addressed requests from the Budget and Finance Committee to review options to expand the use of arts development fees. Based on responses from the department and the city attorney, and as described on pages 2 and 3 of our report, arts development fees may be used for on-site and off-site art, visual and performing arts, and citywide programs. Just to provide some background information, the city attorney previously advised the department that since the municipal code is based on the State Mitigation Fee Act, the city must demonstrate a reasonable relationship between the development project and the impact of the fee. In addition, the municipal code also states that such artistic facilities and amenities must be available to the development project and its future employees. Therefore, in 2007, the city attorney recommended that the fees permitted use be focused on a one-block geographical radius around the developer paid-in program project. The city attorney worked with city stakeholders to define new parameters and has advised that a wider geographic parameter can be consistent with the law on a case-by-case basis as long as a reasonable relationship between the development and the project is demonstrated and that the services are available to future development employees. The department has met with all council districts to discuss and finalize expenditure plans for the portion of unexpended arts development fees that are scheduled to expire at the end of December 2014 unless council makes certain findings. The department will meet with council districts in the near future to discuss and develop expenditure plans for the balance that do not require council to make findings at this time. In addition, the department has developed administrative guidelines to provide a framework for the development and implementation of expenditure plans in the future. And the department has submitted a separate report on the findings for the expiring fees and the administrative guidelines, which is as part of the current agenda item number 3. At this time, we recommend that the department meet with all council districts quarterly to discuss ongoing projects and submit expenditure plans to council annually. We also recommend that the department submit a status report relative to the Public Works Arts Program on an annual basis. We further recommend that the department formalize updates to the letter of agreement and certificate of deposit to ensure that processes are consistently enforced and applied under the developer-led program. In addition, the department has not revised the arts development fee by an amount equal to the consumer price index as required by the municipal code. The department states that such a revision has the potential to generate additional arts development fees, but would require additional analysis to determine the exact amount that would be generated. We recommend that the council instruct the department to conduct an analysis to determine the amount of any additional fees that will be generated and work with the CAO to annually adjust the fees by the higher of the Consumer Price Index or at 1%, and request that the city attorney prepare and present any necessary ordinances to effectuate this. That concludes our report and can answer any questions you might
Great,
have.
thank you. And before we get to questions, colleagues, what I'd like to do is go ahead and have Cultural Affairs present.
Wonderful. And my presentation earlier really merged the both the motion and the audit response. So, I can speak just a little bit to the supplemental to the CLA report, which was included. The two key things that we are seeking, of course, is to approve the new administrative guidelines as well as the expenditure plan and fee status report, which commits $1.7 million. And of that, $1.3 million requires approval before the close of this calendar year. That's forthwith. So I'll go ahead and be brief on this.
Okay.
And wait for your questions.
Sure, and just for the record, if you could state why the expiration date is critical and that we move before the end of the year.
Thank you. Do you want to take that, Mr. Rudnick?
I would just say, per the city attorney's advice and looking at the State Mitigation Fee Act and its requirements and provisions for reporting purposes were required for fees older than 5 years to come forward and present what we're calling findings that certain criteria and commit those fees to projects if they're older than 5 years. And so that's what we've done. Of the $1.7 million in fees committed to projects in a report, roughly 1.3 require that approval from council. And we actually have a 180-day window, and that window expires here at the end of this month. So it's been an urgent, exciting process to get all of this together and compiled and bring it before a committee and then full council.
Wonderful, thank you. And that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this motion last summer. 16 months ago we did this motion, but these things take a while. So thank you for all your work leading up to now. And so basically, this keeps us compliant with state law.
Right.
Basically.
Correct.
Okay. Terrific. Anything to add?
I would just add, I just want to thank from the department's perspective, the CLA, the CAO, and the city attorney. They've been tremendously collaborative and helpful during the process, and we just wanted to commend them, and Brian's report was excellently written and put together, so we just wanted to thank their offices.
Right. And I would echo that. I also have to give a huge shout out to the two folks from the DCA, Mr. Matthew Rudnick and Ms. Felicia Filer. They have been working on this painstakingly and being very much in the solutions on this. So without them, I don't think we'd be here today. Thank you.
Wonderful, and I second everything that you all said about one another. It's been great, and I know that my staff has really enjoyed helping untangle this years-long limbo with all of you. So thank you for that.
And I'll just echo again, this is a leadership moment for all of us at all levels, and your staff has been absolutely remarkable to work with. So thank you to David and Star and
Star
everyone.
Parsemian and David Hiron of my staff. They've done a lot of work.
Indeed.
So having said that, just question. Regarding the expenditure of the funds, and I want to commend you also for meeting with each council office. Could you just take us through that process as well that led up to today?
Would you like to do that?
Sure. What we worked on is putting together an inventory of all the fees collected in each district, and we met with each office. We reviewed the fees collected. We discussed the new administrative guidelines and received input on the new process that we've developed. We also, using some software the city is authorized to use, we mapped all the fees so you can see the locations of where fees are collected, and we brainstormed with council offices on potential projects and arts priorities in each district. Really, the urgency was around committing this 1.3 in this initial go-around, and then we'll have kind of a more thoughtful, robust discussion about the remaining uncommitted fees citywide. But for the most part, it was very fruitful. There's a lot of interest, not only in new projects, but also in the conservation of existing artwork and murals particularly. So we're very excited to get moving on the work with each council office.
Great. And when is council approval required? Well, it's by the end of this month.
Right.
So the last day to act will be around the middle of December.
December
and
16th.
And then we go on recess.
Right.
Okay, terrific. And so the notification process for each council district has already taken place.
Indeed.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, colleagues. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. And I just want to compliment Mr. O'Farrell for leading the charge here and for his motion that is long overdue, but I really do appreciate the work that you've done to preserve our culture and the arts community here in the city. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Along with Mr. Huizar, and we had a second from Mr. Cedillo. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I have a question in terms of, does the department have enough staffing
great
to
question.
handle the increased workload that's coming from our public works projects, coupled with the new activities that we expect to come from the new Adf program? How are you? I mean, I know the report talks about using existing resources. I just don't think that's realistic.
Right. So I'll speak to that, and I think Matthew can fill in the blanks. But you're absolutely right, and thank you for bringing that up. We are stretched incredibly thin. The 18% administrative fee will cover additional staffing. We have requested that in our fiscal year 15-16 budget, so we hope that we are authorized for those new positions. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult for us to keep up with the demand and manage these projects effectively. And as you can see, I think it's important to point out that this is not a one-size-fits-all program. That these are programs that have to be deployed strategically and thoughtfully to serve geographical communities, but it also tells the story of Los Angeles and our city as a whole. And I think that this program is going to be a both-and situation. So it's going to be really investing locally, but then we also have to find opportunities to tie this from a citywide perspective. And that takes a tremendous amount of thought, time, staff, leadership, and we need staffing to do that.
I have another question. What is the process for changing a project that's listed in the expenditure plan once the council has approved the list?
Right. I'll give that to Felicia.
And does the change then require council approval?
So we have the ability to, say, for example, you commit, a certain council member commits fees to a particular project and that project becomes infeasible. Right. Later, administratively, we can actually work with the council office to dedicate those fees to a different project. We would just pick that allocation up in the next report that we make to council. So it wouldn't hold up a project, but we would just pick up reporting in the next report, next annual report.
And once the expenditure plan has been approved, how long does the department have to spend and complete the project?
So
does that vary from project to
It does, and we've indicated kind of an estimated implementation date for the proposed projects. There isn't a requirement. Once we do commit the projects, we would hope to efficiently expend the dollars. But as Danielle mentioned, there may be staffing constraints, and as those get resolved, we'll be, I think, better able to deploy the resources.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Comments? All right. So again, I want to thank the controller. He was here earlier, and the controller's office, Cultural Affairs Department, CLA, City Attorney's Office, my staff, other staffs that folks have worked with. And again, we're moving forward. We're going to get this done. We're going to have some art fairly soon. We're going to unlock some of that money, and we'll figure out how to unlock the rest of it in the very near future, so we can increase the arts presence, which is befitting of a world-class city, which we all want to be able to claim. So thank you for all your hard work. So what I'd like to suggest is that we move to approve the CLA recommendations, and those are A through F, with an additional instruction to report on F, the Department of Cultural Affairs, within 30 days to my committee, the Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and Los Angeles River Committee, and also to approve the Department of Cultural Affairs recommendations.
Great.
Yes, sir.
30 days from now is the 1st of January. Why do you say the first or second meeting in January to put a little pressure on everybody, be a little more set? It's a thought.
30 days, first meeting. It's reasonable to come back in the first week in January.
Yeah, good.
All right, we're in the first week in December, so half one, half dozen of the other. So we're good. All right, without objection.
Thank you.
So we are moving forward on those recommendations. Yes, sir.
We'll need to do a roll call vote.
Okay, oh yeah, that's right. This is a joint committee. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Lidd.
Okay, for the Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River Committee, Councilmember O'Farrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Buscaino, Councilmember Lavange,
Yes.
Councilmember Cedillo, and for the Audits Committee, Councilmember Martinez,
Aye.
and Councilmember Blumenfield. Very well.
All right, the recommendations carry, and we will send them to the full City Council
Wonderful.
for adoption.
Thank you
so
very
much. Thank you. And the last, yes, that's it as far as the business, but we do have some public comment cards for general public comment, and I'm not sure if the folks are still here, but we have Antonio Novello, Stanley Chapman, Peter Parker, and Sergio Fuentes. Any of these individuals still in the house? All right. So that being said, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.